Thank you, Gemma. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Cécile de Mailly. I am a consultant. I usually deal with technology adoption and the human side of technology adoption. Before being a consultant, I was a corporate person. I worked for IBM, for AT&T, and for GE, big American multinational companies. And when I started my consultancy, I took the CCC and I graduated in 2010. So what I will speak about today is change in a digital world. It's a very interesting area, as you can imagine. And Gemma, I'm sorry, I cannot. Yes, I can move the slide. Sorry for that. So it's a very interesting area, but the very first question everybody can ask is it really what we are going to speak today? Is it about a toolbox for change, or is it about the society change? And there's kind of a paradox there because, of course, there's it's a tremendous toolbox for change, and you have a way to reach people. You have rich tools like image, video, sound, everything digital. But at the same time, you can only use them if your corporation or your organization is ready to use them. And your organization will be ready to use them when it has adopted the tools. So there's kind of a paradox there, kind of a chicken or egg paradox. To be able to make the most of it, you have to adopt it. So what does it mean for organization? You have a slide here that I did develop during my dissertation in 2009. Which is kind of a map of the different tools that can be used in an organization for change that are digital tools. So you see it ranges from collaboration, which means creating things together, to communities, which means sharing with others. It can be both internal tools or external tools, and it really basically interest all the areas of the organization. So it's really very rich. So this is about tools, but how does it hit the human side of the organization? And that's what really interests me. There's basically three areas of emergence I'd like to talk about today. The first is information and how the information flows. The second is collaboration, how the processes are transforming. And the third, it's business models and disruption we're seeing everywhere. So information. Information in an organization, it's structuring the organization. The traditional way for the information to flow is top-down through the leadership team and the middle management and management to the employees, and bottom-up. When it goes top-down, it's digested, it's explained, management gives context to the employees, and when it goes bottom-up, the management is building together and putting together indicators and offering a summary to the top management. Well, this is changing. It has been changing in the last 40 years, and it's changing again. In the 80s and the 90s, the power in the organization was to retain or to control information. In year 2000, with the advent of email for everybody and digital tools starting to be adopted everywhere, leadership had to find new way to communicate, and basically it was translating according to the audience. The tools have made possible to personalize communication. And more recently, with all social technology like social network, corporate social network like instant messaging and so on, it's more about guiding employees on where to find the right information and how to understand it. But it's still changing, and that's the nice picture. But there's some warnings we need to consider. As I mentioned on the slide, there's 90% of the information has been created in the last 2 years, so there is an increasing volume of information around. There's even a term that has been coined for that. It's infobesity. It comes from uncontrolled sources, so you never know if the information is complete. You never know if the information is accurate, is true, valid. And also, well, it can happen that the employee know about things before the management do. So the management is not ready to give the context because it did not receive the context guidelines from the top management. Or, even worse, employees can know things that the management does not know and that the top management does not know. So it puts the traditional structure of organization in a kind of difficult situation sometimes. I've been putting a slide here. I will not go in detail in it, but I wanted to mention that because it's something that has been changing the way marketing people and communication people work today. It's the Blue Train Manifesto. So 4 consultants in 1999 put that together, and they revolutionize how we understand markets today. And as you see, the most powerful sentence, the first thesis is market or conversation. And this is very, very strong, and this is really what is happening today. There's other very interesting thesis in this manifesto. So you see number 34, and it gives a way for me to make a transition to the next slide. It's company must share concerns of their communities. And what I wanted to talk about in the next slide, it's about collaboration. So collaboration is the second area of emergence I mentioned in this presentation. What is collaboration? It's building together, and how does it work? Thanks to the social technologies and digital technologies, it's very easy to find people in organization or outside organization who can help with problems or are skilled for a specific issue, bring expertise. So it's bypassing the traditional channels of the organization. Usually in the 20 years ago, you were to ask your management to find somebody in the organization to help with a specific problem. And today you can just drop an email, like a message in a bottle, in the corporate social network, and somebody will answer and give you a hand for your issue. So frontiers are blurring. It's very good. It's very fast. It's very efficient. But from time to time, the self-organization it means or that happens hits the culture, the corporate culture, and corporate culture are not 100% ready for that. There are some corporate cultures which are very siloed, very structured, very command and control that really are not 100% happy with this way to do the work. And it also means more iteration, more fuzziness. I mentioned permanent beta, because what happened to project is that there's often new information coming in the life of a project that changes everything. There's you know the word serendipity. It happens for business too. So basically It's very difficult to maintain the traditional way to do project, to have an expected outcome, a time frame, a specific budget. So it's really hitting the traditional processes of the organization. The third area of emergence is the change of business models. We have lots of wonderful innovation like the Internet of Things, like disintermediation. Think about Amazon, which brings books to the end user without going through different seller, reseller, and so on. Collaborative economy, think about, for example, Airbnb, or think about Yelp to help find a service. Big data, artificial intelligence, all of that, it's changing the society, changing the economy, its progress, it's better services for everybody. Yet, and it's what we were seeing with Uber and the taxi drivers at the moment, yet it can really change a market in a very, very short time frame. It's really sudden, unexpected, and it trigger interest from academics and researchers, and basically what they say that 50% or more jobs and markets, of course, will disappear or mutate over the next 15 years. So another warning here, to give you another example about big data and artificial intelligence, because it's not only manufacturing job or how to say that, or jobs like taxi driving that can be hit. To give you an example, it's about radiology. What hospital and radiologists are doing right now, it's loading lots of X-ray and their diagnosis, and we know that in a few months or years, probably years, artificial intelligence with big data, with all these X-ray diagnoses that have been loaded, will be more efficient than the human person, the radiologist, to predict or to diagnose some cancers or some other diseases. So it's really hitting all kinds of market, all kinds of jobs. So I've been mentioning a lot of warnings and caveats together with a lot of progress of areas of transformation. The net of it for organization, corporations, is that it's a real interesting opportunity to break silos, to create more agile organization that react faster, that are really flowing. It's also an opportunity to foster engagement, because your employees will be involved in finding the right solution, seeing the new markets, in being kind of a sentinel for the organization, in picking up that the market is going through a disruption, that something new is happening. And we have tools for that, like tools like crowdsourcing, like jams, like open innovation hackathons, and there's a lot more. So basically, for me, what it means digital word means that it helps to develop organizations' adaptability. And adaptability means continue to live, meaning being more competitive, means being better and being better health. So it's great. So because we speak about change, I'll come back to the very the theme of this presentation that Gemma asked me to cover, which is change in the digital world. And how do I work with my customer when they want to see what digital tools can be useful for them and how they could make the most of it, what I advise them to do is really to invest in transformation. Take a deep dive, or take a dive at least. It means helping employees with some transitional tools. Transitional space, by the way, is the theme, I think, of the third module of the CCC. We go through a bunch of courses on psychology, on sociology, ethnography, and so on. So transitional tools, it's kind of tools that help people get in touch with a new area without them being at risk. So they don't have objectives from their management, they don't have to report anything, they just can kind of play with the new tools. So this kind of transitional tools we have, it's jams, sandboxes, serious games, reverse mentorings. There's a long list, so given the customer, we can choose whatever the best tools are. Of course, you have to size this transformation depending on the organization culture, find the right levers in their culture, and find the right size of the project and where to start it in the organization. And when it's about change, a specific issue, a new strategy to set up, it's very useful, especially for what we call wicked issues. For those who've been through the CCC or who will do the CCC, wicked issues, it's really a concept we visit and revisit all through the education, and the kind of issue where you don't have best practices. So you don't know what to do. And the digital world is very useful for that, because it can gather, it can help find the right idea that you have not been thinking about. It can help find the right person to help. It's serendipity, so it's think outside of the box, basically. So it's really useful for these wicked issues and this disruptive strategy. It needs the organization to let go the traditional way to manage people and the traditional way to manage projects. As I said before, it means allowing a bit of self-organization. It means allowing project to be in permanent beta stage, to be iterative. To give you an example of some work I did with a customer, a pharmaceutical customer, their problem was that they had double-digit, or they still have double-digit growth, so it's kind of nice. And they wanted to address some niche markets because they needed to feed their growth and plan for the future, but they had they could not really hire new teams because they were already hiring a lot. They could not deplete existing teams because they needed all the workforce for their current business. So they could not address these niche markets. So we had we worked together, and what we came up with, what they came up with, and me facilitating the work was that they selected a few niche markets, and they built virtual teams, meaning they asked to people in the organization to dedicate 20% of their time to this niche market without leaving their existing, their current department and their current location, by the way. So it was virtual team because this team gathered through electronic means. And it was also ephemeral team because this team were to work until the niche market had grown enough for the organization to hire a real team. So it was really ephemeral, virtual. It was done, it's still done thanks to the electronic tools. And it's kind of a third dimension of the organization. So it was just an example of what we can do with that. So this is what I wanted to explain to you today. I'm done with the presentation. The only thing I would like to add is doing the CCC was it's very it's kind of you go through a life change kind of, and it gives you the virus of researching. Many of us are still researching today. And this area is very close to what I am currently doing in terms of research. I'm researching on the impact of the digital transformation on middle management. So probably in a few months I have a whole range of new things to explain and to share with you. There's a lot of opportunities, but there's also kind of a need for change agent inside the organization, or change agent like consultant like we are, to help with that, because it's happening whatever happen. So it's happening even if let's say in the very negative situation, the management does not want it, it's happening anyway. But it's better if it happens with some facilitation, with some help, so that the organization avoids the traps and the warnings I mentioned.
This is from Kevin. He's had a couple of questions, but his first question is around could you explain how the management retains control whilst encouraging the use of transitional tools? And the example he gave is a time where innovative thinking is important, but then focus is needed to implement the change.
Well, it's a wonderful question because it's really tricky. It's really tricky. Management somehow has to give up some control, because you cannot make the most of this digital world in a corporation or in an organization if you're not giving up some control, and it's really difficult. It means giving the people in your organization some power at the same level as their responsibility. So it's not the traditional top-down pyramidal command and control organization. It's a new kind of leadership and management, and it makes things a bit difficult to transition. So there's no, as I mentioned, there's no best practices in this area. There's only next practices, meaning we're building the solution. We don't have magic bullets or that easy to use. There's some trust to develop, as well as kind of I don't like the word control, but it's that control processes, meaning that you have to have processes in the organization for kind of a check and balance on all the tasks or all the projects. That means that it does not mean that management will control everything. It means that people will welcome feedback on what they do and will allow control on what they do by people that can help and give interesting advice. So it's not the top-down management control, it's a different kind of control in the organization that is kind of distributed, delegated.
Thank you. That's fantastic. I hope that answers your question, Kevin. If you do have any others, please do feel free to ask those. One of the questions has come through as well from a lady called Lorraine, Cecile. It might be something for yourself and for Eileen to add in as well. The question is, what is your take on the rapid growth of fintechs, and what can the established financial institutions do to remain competitive in this time of digital disruption?
Well, it's a bit of a different question, because I guess it's around ethics and um, how financial institution can be competitive in digital disruption. Um, I don't know if it's about Bitcoin or if it's about the fact that there's now robots buying stock options and shares and things like that. I think it's a different discussion, because it's about putting back some ethics in a digital world, and the word, unfortunately, the word competition and the word growth by any means does not really cope with ethics most of the time, unfortunately. So I'd say we'd have to build a new world where institutions exist because they build a future for everybody, rather than because they deliver growth and profit to themselves and to their shareholders. Um, so I'm a bit of worried with the question. Sorry for that, because it's not a question I can really answer. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure if it's really, let's say it that way, I'm not sure it's really mandatory to help financial institutions to be more competitive, because we're already in, you know, the blue ocean strategy and the red ocean concepts. We're kind of in a red ocean for financial institution, and we are to find the blue ocean somewhere. And the think outside of the box way to work financial institution, for them to help the society rather than to create more and more crisis.
Thank you very much. And the next question's around, we talked earlier in the presentation, Cecile, around creating a transformative culture and ways to do that and tools to help with that. The question's around, how can I persuade the board and the senior leadership to take on the idea of transformation and to take on the all the ideas around change and the ways that you could do that you've highlighted? How can you put a business case forward they would listen to and want to support?
I would turn that the other way around, because I've been working in that area and I had that question quite often. If I understand well the question, it is, how do you convince your executive committee or executive management that you need to go there? And well, it's kind of a heavy responsibility or a heavy workload to do that. What I do now with customer, because I still get the question very, very often, is two steps. One step is awareness, building awareness. So you do an awareness day or an awareness workshop 2 days with the executive committee. So the difficult thing is to convince them to dedicate a day or half a day or 2 days into a kind of a deep dive into what is digital, the digital world, and what you can do with that, what does it mean, what are the new business models, and so on. So but usually it's very, very people are very, very happy with this kind of awareness workshop. So I have my own specific tools to do that with creating think tank times and things like that, and introducing other experts and so on. And then that's the first step, awareness of the executive committee. And then you have to find a real tricky issue in the organization and say, I will deal with that through digital tools, and use collaboration, and use maybe, I don't know, crowdsourcing or a jam, or I don't know what kind of tool you can use, but use digital tools for that. So it can be very useful. I remember Alstom, for example, had to rejuvenate their learning, their business university, and what they did was to allow any kind of employee to film very short videos through mobile phone, any kind of low-level technology, did not need a high-end camera and so on, and to post that into kind of their own internal YouTube channel, and they created hundreds and hundreds of videos that the university helped translate in many languages, because it's a multinational and anyone does not speak English, so they created those short videos with their mobile phones in their languages. They posted that into the Alstom YouTube, and it created an entire new way to share learning across the organization, and rejuvenating the traditional corporate university, and it really was a big success.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
No, no, it's fantastic. Thank you, Cecile and Eileen. It's really good to have different perspectives on dealing with that challenge, because you're absolutely right. It's a tough and a big ask and a big piece of work, as you said, Cecile. And it's good to have a proper real life example as well of how that can work in an organisation, and the different tools that you've been through and talked about today gives you a chance, gives people an understanding of some of the ways they might be able to do that. So thank you, both of you. I'm going to go to the last question now, which actually is for you, Cecile. So it relates rather to your previous point about how you can persuade a board to support a change program or transformation. And this is from Jana. And Jana's suggesting that after the awareness workshop that you mentioned, how would you secure continuous commitment from the management or from the board?
Okay, well, the thing is to very quickly find that pilot project you will run through digital tools, pilot change project. So find this pilot even before the awareness day. You need to have an idea of that, and the awareness day should be also the location and the time to have the executives speak together about their issues, and decide which kind of issue they would like to run through this new tools, or this new model of change management. And then if you have the pilot project, does not need to be big, but it needs to be strategic, it needs to be important, it needs to be futuristic, I would say, for the organization, or tricky or wicked, meaning important, not big, but important. If you have this project, if you can make sure you have one sponsor in the executive committee, then you have continuous commitment from the management, because you'll have a channel to report to them. You'll have someone from the executive committee who will want to have information and know how it's going and so on. So it's really the way. It's really the two steps I was mentioning: one, awareness, and two, a small wicked project to start with.
Thank you, Cecile. Thank you. That's very helpful to elaborate on that point. We've now come to the end of the webinar now. I wanted to thank you, Cecile, and you, Eileen, for your contribution in the presentation.